the three with us today. We've got Dillon Burroughs and Dan King.
Yeah, Dillon, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Great to be with you today.
And Dan, you there?
Yes, I am. Also glad to be here.
What happened to Daniel?
Well, I figured you could only handle two of us at a time, so we'll try to represent him well here as we have three authors, as you mentioned, on the book.
Yeah, it would be hard to interview three people on the radio at one time. I know that you ever see. There's this one show. I was in the doctor's office the other day with my wife, and there's this show on Headline News, and it's this legal show, and so you got the host up there, and then you got six guests, all with their little pictures on the television. I mean, you hardly get them in the television screen.
So sure, you can do it, but it's easy to have a lot of crosstalk. So it's just good to be here with you today. It's an honor to share some time with you on the air.
Absolutely. Well, tell us what the book's about, Dan.
Well, the book is about really breaking away from the politics of the issues and everything else. With 12 different issues that we've identified in the book, things like poverty and health care and environmental care, human trafficking, things like that. And really getting to the heart of the Christian response to those things and doing something about it. And it's something that we believe that every believer can and should be doing. So we try to tell the stories of churches and people that we know are doing great work, highlight what they're doing, and hope to educate and empower people with resources so that they can kind of walk away and say, hey, now I know about this issue, but also what I can do about it as an individual.
Dillon, so you guys, the three of you, you, Dan King, who's on the phone with us, just commented, and Daniel Darling, wrote a book about Christian activism. Is that what it's about on various issues?
Yes, you're exactly right. And basically, a lot of times Christians are known for what they're against, but not necessarily what they're for. So we certainly want to stand against sin, against unrighteousness in our culture, but we also want to be known what we're for the cause of Christ, and also providing for the relevant needs people have in their lives, providing hope through practical means. So we address things like human trafficking, immigration, we deal with poverty, we deal with disaster relief, and some of these other matters where it's not a matter of where you stand politically necessarily on some of these topics, but what we can do as individual believers and as Christians in groups and in churches to do something to make a difference, to help show our faith, and ultimately to do what Jesus said, which is to bring glory to our Father in heaven.
What do you have to say about Immigration Nation? That's chapter 2, Dan.
Well, I think my big thing is, and Daniel Darling, our co-author, is the one who wrote that chapter. But one thing I'd really kind of take away from that too is really remembering that at the heart of the issue, there are just people involved, and we've been called as Christians to care for people. So whether things need to be done to change the system or whatever is one thing, but we also need to remember that there are people that need to be taken care of, and how can we help out people in any given situation, regardless of what side of a border they come from.
What do you say about that, Dillon?
Well, I think he does a pretty good summary there, but in terms of immigration, there are two sides we're looking at. We're looking at the biblical perspective of God's love extending beyond the borders of our own country to the people of every nation, but also honoring the laws of our land. So right now in Washington, you're hearing a lot about immigration reform and what needs to be done, both regarding national security as well as caring for those who come in and out of our country and making sure the laws are appropriately stated as well as enforced. But then you also have to deal with our side as Christians. What do we do with the people who are already here? So there's a lot going on, but as Christians, we're taught to care for those who come from any nation where they're from and present the gospel of Jesus Christ, help care for their needs, but also live within the law of our land. So there's certainly room for improvement in some of that, but we can do our part while our legislators are doing their part to improve the issue.
I don't want to get bogged down in this. It's just one of the issues that you guys cover, and I appreciate both what you said here. I guess what I have to listen for, and sometimes I think Christians need to be careful of doing this. Lay the guilt trip on the people who are against this particular immigration bill that's out there now, and if you're not for it, then you're not a real Christian. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And we look at the Bible, and there's no specific biblical teaching about a particular legal immigration law that's being discussed in our by our
Right.
legislators right now. So we can argue and debate that
Right.
as Christians one way or the other, but there are true biblical principles that we need to be standing for regardless of which way the law goes.
Hey, absolutely. Compassion. But the principles by which we treat people as Christians are universal. And
Right, and I like to say that God's love does not end at the border, and neither should ours, and that's a good principle to stand by, even if you don't understand all the issues related to immigration in our country.
no, I think we should try to be kind and reach people who are here. They may be here illegally, but they still need to know the Lord. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And they still need to, and so, but at the same time, Christians don't need to be encouraging people to break the law to come into our country.
Well, that's exactly right. We
Yeah.
want to work through whatever system is in place
Right.
in our nation to help people do what is right, but also in the midst of that, show Christian love and concern for
Exactly.
people's needs.
You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. The title of the book, and it covers, I just hit on immigration, but it covers 12 different issues of the day that Christians need to know about and be concerned about and do something about when we can. Everybody can't do everything, but we can all do something. As they say, the book is called Activist Faith, from him and for him. Activist Faith from him and for him. Basically, it's encouraging people to use their Christian faith to be motivated to do things to stand for righteousness, to champion things that the Lord would champion and wants us to be a part of here on planet Earth. To borrow from Phil Robertson, Planet Earth. Nav Press, if you don't know who Phil Robertson is, I don't have time to tell you people. We'll have to revisit that another time. Nav Press is the publisher of the book. Dillon Burroughs is with us with Dan King. They've written the book along with Daniel Darling. And Ray, go ahead.
I'm looking at the 12 issues here, and what strikes me about this book that is actually quite attractive is that there certainly is political or huge meta issues involved in all of this human trafficking. You've got a chapter on crime and urban decay and environmental care. So you could talk about the political sides of any of this. You've got a chapter on war, terror, and genocide. I think that just to take that one, I think probably a lot of us would go, well, I don't know what difference I could make on a personal level, on a local level, about an issue as broad as war, terror, and genocide. What do you guys have to say in that chapter?
Well, I'll start. This is Dan, and one of the things I really tried to go for in that chapter is not even really trying to express whether war in general or even specific wars are really right or wrong. We talk about some very old kind of guidelines for just war, unjust war, and stuff like that too, as well as kind of a basis and foundation for understanding kind of motivation behind different conflicts and stuff. And a lot of times when some of the worst things, the terrorism and genocide and things like that happen, it even kind of starts to break those lines of what could be considered a just war. But really, for the average person, to deal with an issue like that, it is very tough to think of some wild dictator somewhere who's really oppressing people, and what can I do as somebody who lives in small town America somewhere actually do about that? And the reality is that we live in a world that has war. Has these terrorism and genocide issues and stuff like that too as well. And a lot of us know people who are impacted by this stuff one way or another. Maybe there's somebody who's serving in the military, going away and serving in Afghanistan or something like that, and returning home. Some of these people have post-traumatic stress disorder issues and stuff that we can, as a church, help bring healing and restoration to those people in some ways. We know people whose spouses are away at war, and how can we help care for some of those families who have a husband or a wife who's off overseas, fighting for whatever reason it is and stuff. So there are a lot of things that we can do when we even look right in our own communities and understand how different people may be impacted by some of the war issues going on all around the world.
I'll just give you one example of what you're talking about here. I was reading this last week. there are Christian ministries that help people around the world who are in war-torn areas. Uh, in the case I was reading here, in the Sudan, in Africa, the Muslims are terrorizing the Christians there.
Yep.
And the Barnabas Fund, I was reading about this. That's the name of the group. I'm not familiar with them, but evidently they're a Christian charity. But they've been getting these Christians out of the country or out of the way. I mean, physically putting them on buses and planes and all kind of stuff. I think they've gotten several thousand of these Christians who are being persecuted by the Muslims in the Sudan out of the way. And that's something you could do. I know Franklin Graham's ministry does, Samaritan's Purse does similar type things. So you may not be able to go into these places, but you can help financially and pray for them. And so that's one way to help in a situation. You would go, I'm just one person in America. How can I help people in the Sudan, for example?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the groups that I came across is really it's the mother of a son who served and actually died, I believe, overseas somewhere, who sends bandanas with scriptures over written on them to people overseas. And she's got a really great ministry to do that, to minister to soldiers who are overseas, and a lot of little things like that sometimes we don't even think of. It's really leave a big impact on the people.
Dylan, what's the title of your book? And it's published by NAB Press.
Yes, the title's Activist Faith, From Him and For Him, and as you mentioned, it addresses 12 of the leading social issues of our day and how Christians can get involved in practical ways to make a difference. And we discussed here war, terror, and genocide and some ways to get involved in where you are and to make a difference. But there are many ways. I mean, you look at something as practical as child sponsorship through Compassion International or through World Vision or some other organization that's helping children out of poverty and to get an education and hear the gospel. We may not think that's that much of a deal or it's that large, but the power of many believers in many places pouring into the lives of the next generation of children around our planet is literally changing the world. And when it comes to who is making the biggest difference out there, when it comes to poverty, many of these people are everyday Christians who are in churches across America and other places who are doing good deeds in Jesus' name and seeing lives being changed as a result.
I got to ask you about your chapter on sex in the family. There's probably no issue right now hotter across the country. I mean, we talk about it pretty often here on AFR about the whole question of the gay rights movement and gay marriage. But
Right.
You guys are approaching the question from more of an individual, personal basis, and also from the local church basis. In dealing with a true hot-button issue like that, it's in the headlines every day. What does an activist faith look like in that area?
Well, I'd say from practical experience, the best thing that I've been able to do is apply Ephesians 4:15 that says to speak the truth in love. Too often you hear Christian voices that are, talked badly about in the news, and it's not because of their position necessarily, it's because of how they're going about it. So we stand very strongly on what the Bible teaches about family and about sexuality, but we need to communicate it with grace and with love, just like Jesus did. He was persecuted for what he stood for, but he also attempted to communicate truth in a way that shared love. And if we do that, it gives us an audience of some of those people who are open to the gospel, who are open to biblical teachings. And a lot of it has to do with how we approach the issue in addition to what we believe on the issue.
I was smiling when I heard you say that because I agree like 300%. 400%. How many percent do you want? I agree with what you said. But
Good to know.
It's difficult. It's hot. I mean, this is such a hot topic that if you speak out for biblical morality, even in a kind and gentle way, you're apt to be misunderstood by somebody. And some Christians, I think, have decided, well, we're just not going to talk about this at all. What do we do? What do we do then?
Yeah, and I think we have to be honest about the fact that we are going to be persecuted as believers. And Paul, I think, is the one who wrote that everyone who desires to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. So if we are being persecuted, we might not be doing it right, in other words. So we have to be willing to take a strong stand on issues, but we don't have to be mean about it. And that's what we try to do in Activist Faith, is say, don't just say this is what I believe on an issue. Let's get involved and do something, whether it's getting involved with a pro-life ministry in your town to be able to rescue children who otherwise would be aborted, or to do something that presents a family in a way that the Bible does that actually makes a difference to fatherless children, or stands to help traditional marriage be stronger. We don't have to just sit around and talk about what we don't like. We can go out and make a difference about it.